Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about virtual and media production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about our coverage of NAMM and Cine Gear, and we're going to be brainstorming, figuring those things out. So stay tuned for that. And again, if you'd like to see more about what we're up to, go to officehours.global. All right, now we're going to jump to our questions. Mitch, take it away.
Thank you, Alex. Our first question from Tlaloc Miguel Lopez Waterman in Salisbury, Maryland. Today is the 11th Global Accessibility Awareness Day, GAAD. What is the most important thing for us to think about and strive for on an important day like today, and maybe more importantly, every day?
Go ahead, Laura.
Good morning. And one of the biggest things is, if the graphic will come up, thinking about our websites and what we can do to make them just a little bit more accessible. The graphic that I've put in for them to put up is from the WebAIM 1 million website survey. They surveyed 1 million web pages. They do this like every year. And it shows the percentage. We're getting better over time. But we still have a long way to go. And these are the most popular websites. These are not little websites. Officehours.global is miles ahead of most of your general websites. And Alex, at some point, could you kind of explain what Apple's done this week?
Yeah, I mean, getting ready for this, I mean, Apple has, and Apple pretty much kind of leads in a lot of ways, leads accessibility. It's a little easier for them because they own the entire ecosystem. So it's easier for them to like decide, we're just going to do this. It starts to work everywhere. So some of the things that they've done, they announced or that are coming out are, things like door detection. They're actually able to tell you whether the door is going in or out, how far away it is. And one of the things that I was thinking about while we were talking about this on Mac Break is, I think that there's a potential market for folks with low eyesight wearing. If Apple releases glasses, it could potentially somewhere in the future replace the walking stick, because it would be able to tell them everything around them. And let them know what's going on, probably with a little bit more accuracy. So it's a really interesting thing. You can now see your watch on your phone. Live captions. So they're starting to add live captions to iPhone, iPad, and Mac. So if you're on a FaceTime or you're watching almost anything, it'll actually be able to start capturing. But FaceTime is a big focus for that. Of course. They have something that I didn't quite understand at first. It's called Siri Pause Time, and it lets users, with speech disabilities, adjust how long Siri waits before responding to a request. I was hoping that it was more like you could have Siri Pause Time, which I thought that would have been a really great feature, and hopefully Apple will continue to work on that, because it sounds like it'd be really, really good. They're starting to add ASL and captioning, of course, for Apple Fitness, and so there's a lot of, there's a long list. You can just search Apple accessibility, but it is Apple's definitely taken kind of that front lead of really pushing accessibility. And I think the accessibility is really important, not just because it's the right thing to do, but over time, a lot of times it becomes good business. I mean, one of the things that really pushed captions forward was that when captions started showing up, then people started looking at them and deciding whether they're going to watch a live stream or watch a video based on the captions. And so, a lot of what prep has created such a demand for captions is because of that little process there. So making it easily available can also have a lot of good marketing effects. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Seeing that question, it makes me think a little bit more of the Office Hours mission statement, and I'm sure I'm not going to get it right, but the idea that we don't leave any conversation behind means that we don't discriminate or marginalize accessibility as part of our mission. So we do it every day. We just need to keep it top of the mind.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Nick, Tom, go ahead.
And more kudos to Apple, because I know that they have a special accessibility helpline so that, you get to specialists that are there to help you with the specific issue that you're dealing with. I have hearing aids, and I've talked to them a number of times, and they are there to help.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge priority at Apple. I mean, you definitely, when you work around anything around what they're doing, figuring this out is something that they think about all the time. Next question.
And the seventh scroll asks the question, morning guys, so into the extreme, we have a G2 hardwired and a 6K Pro Hollyland wireless. Audio for both cameras is coming in via X32. And MIMO, the sync is off with the 6K whenever we switch to it. Any recommendations on how to fix?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, usually in this situation, you always have to go to the slowest piece of equipment. This isn't for iMag, I assume. So you have to slow down everything to the greatest delay, which I assume is going to be over the Hollyland. So I put a link in for a Roland. I think it's a VC1, and it does actually delay HDMI signals. And you could use something like that. It's $650, so it's not a cheap delay. But I thought, boy, if you even have like an old ATEM, old mini sitting around, you could try that and see if it slows stuff down to the. But then you don't have the adjustable one. I assume the Roland has some adjustments that you can do.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, same thoughts. The Hollyland is probably introducing 2 to 3 frames of latency. If you have the budget, I would highly consider a Teradek Bolt 4K. I have one of those units, and it's less than a frame. It's almost, actually, it's not really noticeable at all, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, you have to delay it to the slowest denominator there.
Yeah, and what you can actually, if they're all going through the X32, of course, the X32 has delay in it, so you can delay any of the inputs or outputs there. So that might be something that you want to use with the X32. You're absolutely right. The Hollyland is adding a couple frames. It's very common for wireless to add a little bit of delay. A lot of times we tend to split the difference. We don't tend to go all the way to syncing up with the wireless. We'll oftentimes go a frame short, or so, so that we get closer to it. It is better, though, always to have your video ahead of your audio as opposed to the opposite, because in the real world, we lose about a millisecond. The video gets to you about a millisecond faster than audio. So the video being the world, the rendering that's happening in real time when you're not on a screen is the video is getting to you about a millisecond per foot. So if someone's 30 feet away, they're already 30 milliseconds off, and our brain adjusts for that automatically because it sees it all the time. It's what's confusing for our brain and why we notice people out of sync is when the audio is in front of the video, because that doesn't happen anywhere else in our life except for AV. Next question.
And it's coming in from Sky Gleason on the panel, Seattle, Washington. He says, Mitchell, I think, how did your conversations with Tony Mobley go?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Going into it, I was a little put off because I haven't done interviews in about a decade. And I wasn't sure how to present myself because, are you the personality? Are you the, and I got a lot of good advice from various members of the office hours community, including Sky. And what served me best was the idea to live in the moment and answer the questions honestly and be yourself. And after like the first question, I was off and running, and the hour and a half went by so bloody quickly yes, I got it. That it was surprisingly easy to do. Tony made me feel very comfortable. The back end crew that was there, including Laura. It was a fun experience, and I highly recommend it for anybody. And I guess that's the idea, is that Tony can have a conversation with anybody. But the one thing that I noticed the most, I'll make this really quick, is the idea of having conversations. It's so hard to do in today's world where people clam up on certain subjects or, want to know what kind of tribe you're from. The conversation with Tony, I think, went wherever it wanted to go. It was very cordial and easy to do. So I think we need more conversations among all of us.
Yeah, Tony has a way of kind of just, you kind of sink into a space and have this conversation. It's quite a thing. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Mitchell, you don't have to worry about being a character. You're always a character. So I don't think that was never going to go away. Next question.
It's just trying to separate them is the problem. This question from Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. Is there a way to turn off HDCP on a MacBook? Mac OS Monterey's i7. I'd like to avoid using a decimator before capture card. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jason.
The answer is not reliably. I'm going to exclude boot into safe mode, go into the TV app and authorize your Mac. best way I think is to just turn it around and go, USB-C to HDMI out, or if you really want to get fancy, DisplayPort or SDI, and that will absolutely bar it because it can't be carried.
Yeah, and the goal for HDCP is to not be able to turn it off. I mean, that is what they're trying to do there. So, next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. Mac Stadium markets their Mac OS Cloud for developing iOS applications on Windows. Wouldn't the lag from using Mac OS over the internet be detrimental to the Mac OS user experience?
Go ahead, Jason.
Not necessarily. If you have a distributed workflow and you have a mature code base and all you're doing is pushing specific builds up so that they can kind of just be published in kind of a sane manner, not necessarily. If you're one guy developing in the cloud because you think it's cool, probably.
Yeah, and the big issue there is it's mostly for I think that most of the Mac Stadium stuff is for developers who are trying to test things out. Like they're building something, they don't want to have a bunch of hardware there. They can test it across a lot of things, and so in that case, the lag doesn't matter. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks a question. Apple is showing late July, August delivery dates for MacBook Pros and late August for Mac Studios. Could that mean new models at WWDC, or would that be a result of the chip shortage?
I'll go ahead, Jason.
It's not either or. Keep in mind, only about 50% of the WWDCs do they even talk about hardware that's available for in the next month or so. It's almost always a tease and a coming sometime this year. So no, doesn't really matter.
And the chip shortage may have some impact on it, but a big piece of the puzzle is the demand is incredibly high. Apple has never sold this many Macs before, and so the M1 push has really driven demand very, very high. And I think that it's not just that there's a chip shortage; it's that there is also a very high demand for the hardware. Next question.
John Nichols from Concord, California, working on a mobile 3-camera hybrid meeting setup. Guy's team has been helping me. Thank you, Guy. Next step is to get the setup packaged for transport. What are some good places and ways to go hands-on with different portable rack systems?
Go ahead, Noah.
I personally have never ran into a vendor or a place without like renting something, but that will allow you to have the hands-on with the racks. I don't know. I don't know if it's just like because that hands-on touch can wear out equipment over time, but basically I've just gone to YouTube and I've built different racks over the years for different things. I'll show you my mobile fly kits here. So, but the thing about these kits is they're all customized, right? Every patch panel, every part of that system is all custom. So what happens is you basically just iterate over time and you build out different systems that work for your needs, but there's not really a place that I've seen that you get hands-on right away and you can figure it out the first time. I think it's an iterative process.
And go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, this is one value of going to trade shows is you can go to booth shopping. I actually go, if you want to go look for tripods, go to camera booths, see whose tripod they're putting under their cameras. If you want to look at microphones, go to a monitor booth and see what microphones they're using. It's just a good way to know who's using other people's product. And generally speaking, if you could travel with who's going to be the most abusive on equipment, probably a traveling, band of some sort. You could probably go see what kind of racks they're using if you have that kind of access.
Yeah, what you're looking for generally, if you're really going to get serious about it, I would definitely be thinking about a custom. I think that their proto case is what we've used in the past, or roadcases.com is another one. But you're either going to get something that you can fly with, that you can put in that you can go out with. In that case, we use I in the past have used a lot of the SKB I series. They used to be called, I think, iFlies. And these are open racks that sit inside of a case. What's nice about that is that you're not adding you're not putting a case inside of a case or doing anything else. You're putting racks, you're dropping racks. These can be from 2U all the way up to 10U. What happened was I actually talked to the folks at SKB about this at one of the conferences. They had all these people, they build shock mounted racks, and people started getting into the habit of taking the shock mounted racks out of the shock mounts. Like they would unrack them, because they said we just want that structure. We don't want the rest of the case to be set up on a piece. So SKBs just started building them that way. So that's basically what happened. Is it's a shock mount case. It slides into a case that'll hold it in foam, but you can pull it out. And what we do is we pull these out and we can stack them. I really wish they had a better hook system that would connect to each other better, but it's a whole other story. We end up using oftentimes tie wraps and so on and so forth just to pull them together. And so we stack these up, and so what's nice about them is that when there'll be a video section, an audio section, the comm section, and so these are all different cases. When we get there, we just open them up and start stacking them up. We try to keep them oftentimes as close to the same size as possible. I think most of our cases are, I believe 6U is kind of where we try to find our way towards, mostly because it's easier to put them on your cart. So it has less to do with anything else other than when you start stacking a bunch of the stuff on carts, it becomes important. Anyway, so those work really, really well. And then otherwise, when we build road cases, we design them. So we design, one thing to think about is if you're thinking about going internationally, you want to keep your case under 55 inches. We cap it out at 52 inches to be safe. This is because it will double the cost of putting it on a pallet if you go over 55 inches, they can't put it in a plane on the pallet. They can't put it in the containers. And so it becomes really expensive to move. So 52 inches is the highest we'll go on a designed rack that we think will go international. And usually what we do is, again, have a video rack, an audio rack, and then usually a rack full of shelves. You'd be surprised at how useful having a one whole rack case that has like little just pull out shelves that hold everything else that you need is. So those are some things to think about there. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I would suggest if you're building out any sort of rack to make sure you give yourself extra space, right? I feel like when I first designed it, I was like, oh, I'll fit it in 4Us, then it was 6Us, then it was 8Us, right? So make sure you give yourself ample room to grow. And, there's always I need to add this extra thing. And so if you try to fill it before you fully design it and get hands-on, then you're going to realize you're out of space. And then I had a follow-up, Alex, for the larger cases that you ship with media rate, is it still like the $75, or do you have to pay?
Well, are you talking about road cases?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, road cases, we either use United Cargo, which takes like 6 months to get, so you have United Cargo, Southwest Cargo, and then when we go internationally, we use a company called Rocket, and Rocket manages everything for us. They manage the carnets, the delivery. I literally, they will show up when they say they're going to show up, almost anywhere in the world. We had one where we shipped it to Davos and they said they'll be there at 4 and they were there at 3:59 and it was a snowstorm. Like, it is like it shows up when they say it's going to show up. And so, but the Rocket is kind of the way that we manage that internationally, but in local, domestically, we handle it with usually United or Southwest Cargo. And again, there's a whole lot of background checks and everything else that are required. That's why it takes a long time. You can often find a freight forwarder that'll do it for you. That will do that, for a fee, because obviously they don't want you to put things unsafe in the cargo hold. So there's a lot of backgrounds, and it takes a while to get to it. It's been almost impossible to get in the last 10 years. We were glad we got into it when we got into it. Next question.
Paul Valhus from Austin, Texas, has a question. He says, Fiber Connect starts June 12th in Nashville, right on the heels of CineGear. Can we add this to our office hours show coverage? Fiber Connect 2022, Sunday, June 12th through Wednesday, June 15th, Gaylord Opryland Resort.
Go ahead, Noah.
The short of it is you need someone to spearhead that project, right? And the two folks, Josh and myself, are already kind of hyper-focused on the task at hand, and we do have a lot of resources going towards that. So unless we have a large pool of people who are willing and able to cover it, I think at this point we'll have to punt and do it at another time.
Yeah, I definitely open to it next year. I mean, I think that we could get to a point where we're covering something every couple of weeks or every couple of months, but we have to get to a point where it's stable and eventually we, as a group, own all the equipment that's necessary, that is not trying to carve it together. We are looking at getting, for CineGear and NAMM, getting some electrosonic transmitters. I think we're talking about mics. We're still in the hunt for a live view. So we're kind of working through some of those things. I'm working on getting some of the audio interfaces that we need for the camera, for like iPhones and such. But we're slowly piecing all the bits and pieces together. Next question.
Sky Gleason from Seattle, Washington. The year 2035 is just 12 years from now. It is predicted that 1 in 3 jobs will be automated. What job do we learn now so that we might not be automated out of a paying job in the near future?
Go ahead, Laura.
One of my serious beliefs is that education will change, but it will not ever be able to be fully automated. With the YouTube and things like that are great, but I think it's actually going to need to be more customizable and not a one-size-fits-all.
Good.
12 years from now, I'm probably going to be in assisted living, so I'm going to bone up on Yahtzee and bingo.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I just was looking historically what happened 12 years ago, and Bruno Mars was happening. It was the second iteration of Obama, and that just feels like it was just yesterday. And so I'm thinking 12 years is going to be like in about 2 seconds. So consequently, I was looking historically. We started with what the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and those took thousands of years to iterate. And then we move into the Iron Age and the Steel Age, and that took a couple hundred years. And then we go in the 50s to the Silicon Age, and now we're talking about how rapidly things change in decades. So that's why I'm kind of looking at this question for not just myself, as Mitchell says, I'll I'll learning to yell Yahtzee with the best of them, but I'll probably still wanting to be active because that's just who I am.
Go ahead,
So.
John. Oh, good. Sorry.
It's the question for the other us that are out there.
Go ahead, John.
I've been hearing this my entire life, Scott, that this robots were gonna. If I can have a robot do my yard work or do the laundry, that's what I'm waiting on. The Industrial Revolution was the big change, and that's when the Luddites got very angry. From moving from the farm to the factories was a big one. But we're humans. Adapt and overcome, my friend.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think the fundamental question is like, what happens when work is not part of our everyday, right? And it's, a lot of our identity is in work. And if it changes in the future where less of us are working or, or some of us are retiring, like, what does that look like? Do we spend our time in art, music, hobbies, But for me, yeah, it's like finding the passion and being connected to people. I'm religious, right? So that's part of what I do. But you said the word job, and that kind of stuck out to me too. I feel like we move from a job to a career, and then if you're lucky, you move from a career to making a fortune or investing, right? So I would say keep going down that path and looking into not just exchanging time for money, but to let your money work for you.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
There's only one thing that's always custom: buy, sell real estate.
Yeah. I think that the we have to think also about just our level of consumerism and how it affects our need for cash. So, a lot of times, there's, I've had conversations with folks around the world, and different ones have different levels of overhead, and some of them aren't working as many hours as a lot of us do here in America. I think a heavily debted society has to work long hours to make all this work and worries about those things all the time. When you're not in that situation, I am. I have a big debt, a house that I pay off. But I think that is it's a real challenge that keeps you going, and keeps you worried about your job. Whereas if you can get some of those things out of the way, and I think that being able to not have to work, not have to be in a certain place to work is going to make a huge difference. Because if I moved out of California and made it half of what I make now, I'd be pretty comfortable, and I would, I could slow things down, and so I think that it is where you live is going to change a lot. I think that when you live in the locations, the United States or California or parts of the country that are expensive, you'll have to be very competitive. You'll have to pay attention. That is the cost of being there, is that it's going to be competitive. And if you move out of there, you have a lot more room to work. And if you move out of the country or out of California, it gives you more space, and so to work. So I think that's I know folks that are in Africa that'll get a big job that they work really hard for 2 or 3 months, and then they get some time. Things are paid off, and what they are able to do is work on their skills. So they'll do some kind of job, and then they'll work on a bunch of things that they should have learned, and they have to figure it out. But trying to make money every single day, for some of them, not all of them, but is not as impactful, especially if they're the big advantage that we have as we move forward is that we get access to a global market, but we can live anywhere. And when you take advantage of that form of arbitrage, that you're able to really live the lifestyle that you want potentially, without feeling like every day is another day that you might not make, that you can't pay the bills. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity. What is important though is as the society becomes more global, is you have to be really good at what you do. So that's part of why I created Pixel Core. Part of why I created Office Hours is that we're all going to have to get better all the time. Like you're not going to be able to, it doesn't mean that you have to work 80 hours a week, but you have to constantly be improving your knowledge base and your skills. If you're expecting to live in a Western country, the cost is that you have to keep going. You have to keep growing, and if you stop growing, you're going to get replaced, by somebody else. And so it doesn't mean that you have to work 80 hours a week. It doesn't mean you have to work 60 hours a week. We're spending a couple hours a day, talking about these things, getting better. There's some projects that we're working on. We can get into after hours and work with other folks. This is just one example of a way to keep your skill set moving forward, but you have to do that now. This is no longer, I learned how to work in a factory and I get to build the same, pipe for my entire career. That you're going to move through 5, 6, 8 careers. If you're starting now, if you're 18 years old, you're listening to this right now, you'll have 5 or 6 different stops in your career, and you need to figure out how you're going to manage that. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think this thing could be a whole second-hour conversation, and I do want to quote Jim Rohn here that says you have to work as hard on yourself as you do on your job, right? So leadership, self-development, on mindset, and just learning every day. And I think we might have skipped Roscoe.
Oh, go ahead, Roscoe.
No, I don't think I was up on this one.
So, yeah, go ahead, Sky.
I want to reassure John that they do have robotic lawnmowers. So it's already there. It's done.
It's like a Roomba for your lawn.
It is. No, it physically is. I don't know if it'd work in your lawn, but it does exist. And so consequently, this is probably, a second hour and or a Sunday morning conversation, but thank you for indulging me.
I think it's an important conversation.
Indulging me because I want to be relevant in 12 years and it's going to be like in 2 seconds. But the punchline, I think, Alex, you quoted your daughter that was quoting when you ask her what is time, and she responded with something that you taught her or she learned somewhere. What is time? And she said,
I don't remember.
She said it's a man-made construct.
Oh yeah, it's a man-made construct. Sorry, I don't remember. I remember half of what I say. That's why I say it over and over again.
Well, I know. I was trying to set you up. There was a softball. Yeah, but anyway, and consequently, in what that means in my brain is that we have a choice what we do with our time. So I'm trying to choose wisely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing is that the most important thing is always going to be who you know. It's going to be your network of people, and I think we talk about that a lot. And the opportunity to work with other folks, the opportunity to contribute to other people's growth, the opportunity to contribute to their success is going to be more important. And it has been in my life, my entire life. Like literally every break that I've ever gotten was because somebody who knew me gave me a chance. Like, so it is, so not everybody has that way, but that is literally for me, it's been every one of those. And so I think that that's also important, is to figure out how you contribute to people around you on a constant basis. This panel being one opportunity, working on stuff together, helping people in after hours, doing things in your community. All of those things are things that help, and it sets you up for when you need it. Next question.
Albie Lopez from San Antonio, Texas has a question. She wants to know, has anyone used a camera intelligence system such as Arsenal 2? And they have a link there for it. Has any producers used any AI systems that have helped out in any of their photos or videos?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, I looked at the video, and so it's quite interesting. It's kind of like taking photos. It's what I think of Photoshop out in the field, where they're immediately compositing things, putting together multiple frames to add some blur to some pictures, that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting technique. My personal thing is I shoot RAW, so therefore, when I go back and hit that automate button, that automatic a button for a LUT or for a look inside DaVinci Resolve. That's about as automated as I get. But it's interesting technology. I don't know how much pre-programming you have to do to get good results.
Next question.
And it's from Brant Kruger in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Any new solutions to GoToMeeting webinar cropping 1080p inputs? Thanks to After Hours and Discord crew, was able to use the DVE on a second attempt to shrink the video size for my presentation. But what else is out there?
Go ahead, Noah.
I'm not sure how well this relates. There is a 4K scaler thing that basically takes one input in 4K and then outputs 4 1080p images. And so you can have essentially one camera with 4 different angles. I think that would be super interesting. And then software-wise, I haven't seen this yet, but I'm sure in the future we'll see that same kind of concept. You take in a 4K signal, you output 1080, and you can essentially digitally crop into different frames. But I don't know how that relates to this question.
I don't have any solid solution other than some kind of scaler. It's a GoToMeeting. I would say don't use GoToMeeting is the easiest way to solve that. I know that if you have a company that requires it, then I guess you're stuck with it. But GoToMeeting is a legacy format. It's a legacy. GoToMeeting and WebEx are both. I mean, at this point, we should just consider them legacy platforms. They're not going to catch up. Like they're not. Let's just be just to call spade a spade. They're not going to catch up. So they don't have the resources to make the turn. So we should just, I would highly recommend trying to advocate for another platform. Doesn't have to be Zoom, but shouldn't be one of them. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the 3 that I could think of, the AJ Roy region of interest little box, like a grand, would do the trick. And then there's a Livestream Studio. If you can wrap it in via software, there's actually some presets where it'll grow those boxes just like hardware would. So you could set up a couple presets. I believe it's 4, and there's little colored bounding boxes. They're like yellow, purple, and you just define the area. And then when you cut to that, it'll actually grow it and take it full screen. And then the same thing happens with the data video hardware. And I'll put a link in the chat to that. It's like Noah was saying, it's the 4K. So I'm not sure how it would work on 1080, pulling something in to make it bigger, full screen. But it should work technically. So I'll put a link to that one. But yeah, it's meant for 4K.
Next question.
Simon Ray from Shrewsbury, UK. What would you recommend to make a backup recording of an HDMI source going into a non-ISO 810 Mini at a price point less than the HyperDeck Shuttle?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So what I've done is I've taken an AR, Blackmagic Video Assist, and used that in between the source and the camera. Because then you get a screen, you can do the pass-through, and of course it records to ProRes through SD card, and it works really well. Otherwise, you could use, Adamus has something very similar to it. And I know Courtney has talked about in the past episodes about even cheaper solutions, but they don't have monitors. I can't really, I don't know them, so I don't trust them. I'd have to do some testing to find one that would work.
Okay, go ahead, Noah.
So the cheapest way I can think of is to take an HDMI splitter and take one into the ATEM and the second one into a capture device, right? You can get a fairly cheap one. I think Elgato has a USB one that's like $100 or something. And then you can basically record on the computer. But ultimately what you're doing is you're trying really hard to get around some solid products like the ATEM Mini ISO. So I would really just have an honest conversation with yourself and see if it's worth getting.
Yeah, there's a lot of gaming systems, gaming recorders. So Courtney has talked about those in the past. And if you actually go up, Y&H makes them. There's I believe a pluggable one. These are boxes that are HDMI in, HDMI out, and they record on the way through. So those are, if you do HDMI, I think if you search like Amazon and you search for HDMI pass-through record, you'll get like 10 of them, and I think we haven't tested them yet, but those are, and I got to follow up with Courtney because I do want to start doing some testing, and that's one of the things I'm interested in. Next question.
Joaquin Matus from Imperial Valley, California, just wanted to give props to Mitchell and Tony. One of my favorite episodes of Conversations with Tony Mobley last night. Great job, gentlemen.
Look at that. Good job, Mitchell. Good job, Tony. All right, next question.
Next question from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, PA. My first 80/20 strut pieces have arrived. What are some must-have connectors, attachments, hardware, and accessories should I look for this system?
Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations, and I'm sorry, all at the same time. Congratulations for entering the club, and I'm sorry you've entered a very expensive world. That if you thought that we weren't going to get you to spend money, as soon as you start putting 80/20 in, you're going to be like, oh, I could build this, and I could build that, and then I could do this. So, I mean, the main things you want to look at, and remember that there are cable management tools that you can put in there. So little loops and so on and so forth that can be put into those things. So you can really kind of tuck things in, as you go. Of course, you're going to have the connectors that are going to connect this to the other struts that you're going to do. So those are those connectors there. But I mean, the main thing is, one thing that I would recommend is you really want to think about the format of what you're going to use. So you're starting with that strut. There's many different versions of those struts, and they all have different shapes. So think about standardizing on one. Like, look at them and study them and think about them. There's not any one that's the right one, but it is important that you get to one version. Otherwise, you end up with a whole bunch of accessories that don't. These ones don't fit with those, and this one doesn't fit with that. So that's the only thing I'll say is that kind of really think about how you're gonna commit to a system, and then you're going to commit to it, because in that, did you get the 80/20 catalog? The paper catalog?
I did not.
Here's the deal. I know that paper is, something we probably shouldn't get all the time, but there are certain catalogs that you should have around, like that you just want to brainstorm. And because the website is fine, but I have learned that with very specific catalogs, it's better to have the paper one. 80/20 is a big catalog, and it's worth having. So the 80/20 U-line Granger, I'll tell you a lot about me. These are the ones that I have laying around. Sweetwater, B&H. I think those are the main ones that I have laying around in paper. There's something about just kind of having, I think of it as kind of like a dreaming session. I open up these things while I'll have a coffee for a break and just go through there. And I don't have any specific need. I'm just like, I'm literally absorbing. I don't know if you're like me, but I go through new stores and I mentally catalog the store. Like, if I've never been in it before that looks interesting, I'll just walk through. I'm not going to buy anything. I'm just literally absorbing what do they sell. And so with these catalogs, I do that. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, to your point about the standardization, this is my, from the first crop, but I did look into it, and it said that 80/20 is a brand, and so there's other versions of extruded aluminum that you could find with that. So yeah, we've definitely gone, hey, we can do other extruded aluminum, and then nothing fits together perfectly. Like 80/20 is the one that makes the most of it, and it does. Yeah, you can definitely get other extruded aluminum, but I would not mix and match, because what happens is they all have just a slightly different tolerance. Tolerances.
And so as someone who thought that I would save money by not doing that, I ended up with a bunch of things that were kind of like didn't fit together very well. Go ahead, Chris.
I think the word you were looking for, Alex, is devotional. You're devotional, where you walk through, or you have that magazine. I would imagine. I'm wondering what your bathroom looks like.
I don't have it. No,
Meditations.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sky.
Reader's Digest. But yes, I remember as a small child looking at the Sears catalog. And so, Alex, my two catalogs are
very much Sears.
B&H and U-Line, believe it or not. There's so many cool gadgets. It's just crazy. Sorry.
All these things you could put in your office, and these goofy signs, the radioactive. Anyway, all right, next question.
And Sky is back with us here. He's got a question. Hard drives. I met with a media industry leader, and he said if there is interest, he would be willing to bring his knowledge to office hours in the second hour if we wanted to go deep into digital storage. Interested?
Yeah, sounds good. Very much.
Copy that.
Next question.
It's from Nick Batt in the UK. We just did the Super Booth show, lots of footage which needed to be uploaded for cloud editing. Remote editor wants to move used footage to a done folder so he can see what's left, but this will break the local to remote sync. How can we solve?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
I wouldn't think of a done folder. I'd think of actually, maybe you'd have to do it for next time, reverse the process. So you have the undone files in a folder. And when it's time to do the editing, you can move them over to the secondary folder, give it its own folder with a name on it or whatever, and then you could do the editing from there. So then when you have to see what's left, you're going to the pre-done, folder.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
One of the things I would do is I would at the I'm going to say Finder. I don't know if you're on a PC, cloud, whatever. I would definitely sort things by day. And I would have, this is my Tuesday footage, this is my Wednesday footage. And if you need to be more granular, then this is the morning footage and the evening footage. But this brings up a very interesting, huge discussion, is that at what level do you organize things at the operating system or, your file structure? And at what point do you organize it in your editor? This is something that, like in Final Cut, it's very easy to do, but you do need to know what you have brought in. And I think the best way to deal with that is to, if people are uploading more footage, they should have, year, month, day, hour probably of when it was uploaded. And then you can look at yours and say, I have everything from 10 a.m. backwards. Oh, here's a folder from 11. So now you have new stuff to bring in.
Yeah, I highly recommend considering that you manage your files using Google Sheets. Rather than moving your files around, what I mean is you build a naming structure, figure out what you're doing, and then start, whether it's Google Sheets or something else. I would not use the file locations to organize the footage. I would have the files go into where they need to go based on whatever criteria you give them, and then have something that says where they are and says what they're for, and has a little checkbox that says they're done. But moving files around constantly is insanity. Like it is, it's going to break links. It's going to cause all kinds of trouble. I would not do that. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Metadata. This is what metadata is all about. When a file comes in, there's all kinds of data associated with it. Talks about exactly what that file is. You just need one little bit to turn off and on to say, yes, it's been used, or no, it hasn't. So I'd say look for even something old. Maybe it was originally used to tell whether it was 16 by 9 square or something pixels. You can agree to use some of that metadata for your own purposes.
And as a note, if you're watching, we're taking a closer look at LucidLink for some of our stuff, and so we had a good meeting with them, and we're going to probably, if you're interested in using that, and even for the shows coming up, that's something that we're going to take a look at pretty closely. So ping me if you're interested in an intro today, because I'm going to talk to them again tomorrow. So I think that's an interesting opportunity there. Next question.
Todd Raines from Allen, Texas. Is there any way on a M1 Mac Mini to see real-time and continuous the computer load, like CPU usage, memory usage, and network throughput? I'm trying to see if I'm running out of computer resources while I demonstrate on Zoom.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, yeah, Todd, there are plenty of ways. And of course, if you're worried about running out of resources, you want the fastest and kind of the most bare metal way that you possibly can do it. So if you're into GUIs, the activity monitor will absolutely do this. It's in your applications under utilities. Or Dennis Champion Walker also reminded me of, and I will put in the chat, don't forget the terminal. Use the top command. The top command is awesome, and it's about as to the metal as it gets.
I actually don't use something that's to the metal. I use iStat menus. I use them on every computer that I have. I use them everywhere. And I have across the top of my desktop on all my computers, it tells me my heat, my bandwidth. You'll constantly see me looking up to see if, like, what kind of bandwidth am I using right now. Send, receive, CPU usage, memory usage, all those things are displayed for me. It's not doing something you couldn't do on the Mac by running some scripts. That's what it's doing. But it's worth every penny. It's just a great application. So I would highly recommend taking a look at iStat menu. It is, I get a computer and then I buy another copy and I install it because then I just know what's going on. Next question.
From Chirag Cheetah, Dallas, doing an outdoor event on a few weeks where there is potential for rain. What is the best way to protect SDI barrel connectors from 4 hour long SDI runs?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so anything above 300 feet, I highly recommend fiber, right? Moving towards that set of SDI. But if you have to and you're using barrels, a trick that I've used in the past, you can actually get heat shrink. Just make sure it's the non-adhesive type. 3/4 of an inch, I think, will cover most SDI runs and basically get a foot or so on each side of the connector. It's a temporary thing, so you'll basically shrink it and then you'll have to cut it off afterwards. But obviously you could do pop-ups and cable covers and that kind of stuff too.
I highly recommend against barrels. That's all I'm going to say. Like, barrels are the devil. I have a bag of them. Like, it is like how to pull things out, but I can't tell you how many times I've had problems with them getting disconnected, them not passing it correctly. Anything you can do to avoid a barrel is worth doing. I don't go more than 150 feet before I go to fiber. That's an SDI cable. That's as far as I'll throw it. So think about those things there. But yeah, shrink wrap I think is a great idea. I've never used it because I almost never use barrels. It's something that's very, very rare. Again, what I do is I buy SDI. When you're thinking about, that costs a lot to buy all these SDI cables, think about buying SDI. Coastal Tools makes a little thing that will score your SDI cable. You can calibrate it, and then you put your own connector on it, and then it costs nothing. Like not nothing, but it's so cheap. Like building SDI cables lowers the cost of your SDI usage by like 80%. You are paying an enormous fee to buy SDI cables, and so you buy them in rolls of 1,000 feet, just 1,000 feet of coax, and terminate them yourself. You'll ruin the first 20. So just buy some extra connectors, and then after that, it'll be great. So go ahead, Roscoe.
If possible, wherever the connector is, raise it up so that the water drips down the cable away from the connector and doesn't pool towards it, if you can do that.
Yeah. And yeah, any chance of rain, just make sure that everything's covered. Don't, I think that don't have it be like, I'll put something over if it rains. You just want to assume, I assume it's going to rain all the time. If you put me outside, I will have a tent, period. Like, I will not be in an open space. I was asked to do an event in Vegas, and I said, where's my tent? And they, it never rains here. I still need a tent. And it was as if someone had poured a bucket of water out of the sky, did millions of dollars of damage, and all my equipment was just fine. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I would say don't skimp on any of the tools that you buy for making those SDI connections, the Neutech connectors. It's a waste of time. Trust me, I've been there and done that.
Yeah, the Neutech rear twists are life-changing. Next question.
Joaquin Matus from Imperial Valley, California wants to know, considering moving from single-mode fiber to SMPTE fiber via the Blackmagic CCUs for my main Blackmagic Ursa Broadcast G2 camera kits to take advantage of the extra functionality. What should I be looking for in SMPTE fiber cables?
I've used the fiber backs. I would never buy them. So, they seem like a good idea. They're the SMPTE fiber backs. I find to be. I love Blackmagic. I use a lot of Blackmagic stuff. They're buggy. The comms don't really work. I've had a whole variety of issues with them installed in systems that I've used. I'm not happy. I'm happy with a lot of Blackmagic stuff, but I'd rather just run fiber to the camera. It has not been a success for us. We spent half a day trying to get just the comms to work from the constellation, and it just couldn't get anything out the other end. And so we've had connection issues. We've had to restart them. We've had a lot of issues working in facilities where these were used. I don't think that they're fully cooked. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I've been on a traveling show with fiber where we had to basically build it for each event. We've done 30 events in the last 6 months. The two things I'll say around fiber, one is if you can get armored cable, it's always best, because almost every show we have about a dozen or 15 or so of those cables, and one of them breaks because it's not armored. It's not designed to last.
And you're talking about SMPTE cable?
I'm not sure about SMPTE fiber specifically. Right. I'm not sure which one we have, to be honest.
But the SMPTE is pretty easy to know because it's a really complex connector on the end. It's not like an ST or LC or anything else. It's like it's the full operational SMPTE fiber.
Interesting.
Okay. So it's a much more complex end. The other thing is that it just, again, what the other issue in addition to the issues that I've had with the fiber back is that the SMPTE is really expensive. It's really expensive to use. It's really expensive to change. It's really expensive to get more of it. I use SMPTE for a lot of things. So when we're coming out of a truck, when we're doing I'm used to using it But when I'm doing my own stuff, I'd really prefer to have rolls of TAC 12 or TAC, TAC 4, TAC 8, TAC 12, just regular glass that I can then, convert on the end and put those in. And again, I'm really a big fan of most of what Blackmagic did. After using the fiber backs, I've been left frustrated most of the time, to the point where we had the option of doing it on our stage that we did, and I chose not to because I just didn't want to deal with it. Next question.
Hershid in Daytona Beach, Florida. What are some accessibility tools or features that improve your daily living? Examples are large font 5, CC, dark mode, etc.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Mine's a little more practical. I'm on a college campus often, so curb cuts are wonderful things. All those curb cuts, when you're riding around on a bicycle, you look for all of those. And the second, there are doors. When you're hand carrying like cameras and stuff, you love doors that you can just push a button and they open and swing out of the way, and you don't end up banging up your equipment or yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, while my phone is attached to my hearing aids, I like the Shocks bone conduction headsets for everything else.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
I actually have my Mac read to me, especially large texts and emails. I'm such an audible person that reading for me is harder. I actually was a little dyslexic when it came to reading growing up, and so it speeds up my workflow, and I could speed up the text. And it's funny because my wife or somebody will come by and be like, "What is that?" It's just the computer reading super fast to me.
Right. It is amazing how your brain, I have really been fascinated by the concept of how your brain gets used to things going faster. And so I keep on turning it up. I find that it's like a thing, and I don't know, what kind of speed, Laura, do you listen to things at?
JAWS is in percents, and I think I'm at like 115 to 120%, which about 50 is normal speech. So. Oh,
right, yeah. So you're a little faster than me. I find myself now. I started off as 1.25, and then 1.5. I now live somewhere between 1.75 and 2.5, depending on the person talking. And I can see myself slowly moving to about 2.0 to 3, if I can get that up, because, I realize my brain just gets used to absorbing the information that fast. And it's so much like, I love looking at something that's going to be 15 minutes long and go, no, it's really only going to be about 8 or 9 minutes long. I can absorb that information faster.
One quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that what people don't realize is you can skim auditorily exactly the way you skim down a page with your eyes. You just got to train your brain to do it.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, big +1 on this. You do not need to be visually impaired in order to be orally enhanced. I am such an oral learner that straight away, I've been using this, and I'm at about 2.2 usually.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Wheels that are on all my gear that I can move around very easily. Sterilite totes, so I can put all my cables into really quick, and then of course the personal assistants, so I can just walk in and I say, "Hey, turn on my lights," and they're all turned on instead of having to walk over and manually flip switches. Yeah,
and for me, the big one is captioning, because I use captioning all the time. I mean, it's funny. Especially, there's a new trend in filmmaking to blend the audio more into the experience, which makes it almost impossible to understand what's going on. So I find my whole family. There's definitely shows. There's shows that we leave it off because it's most of them I realize are the older shows that we watch. Like right now, we're watching Alias, and so we're in season 2, and we'll watch that for the next 2 or 3 months. But when we watch new things, I'm always amazed at how often my family will just turn the captions on because they just want to understand what everybody's actually saying. And so I think that trend it's a really interesting and potentially damaging trend of blending everything in. But the captions and all the technology that was built to make it more accessible is what makes it worth watching. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, Native Instruments has a guide for tuning Windows PCs for audio. What are your experiences running DAWs on Windows?
Go, Jason.
Oh, Douglas, please just get a Mac. Please get a Mac. Please. No, that video is 8 years old, and you should see it exactly like that. The latency monitor that they refer to is pretty good, and other than that, ASIO for all is the best you're going to do, unless you really know what you're doing. Anything past Windows 7, you're going to have to tweak a lot to get any noticeable benefit.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back. When I was practicing my keyboard this morning, I started playing scales in each hand, and it helped me solidify the notes and feel of each scale. How should I balance repetitive scale exercises with practical concepts? I'm using Melodic's app.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Oh, Douglas, you are still in the beginning stages. You've now mastered doing it on your left hand and your right hand. Next is mastering it at both hands simultaneously, and then you're going to start getting into arpeggiations, doing major, minor, sevenths, diminished, augmented. You're going to have a lot of stuff. But the most practical thing that you could do is when you start to learn a song, figure out what scale, what is going to be used within the song. And then what you would do is you would then run that scale a couple times before you play the song, especially if there's any type of where you're doing any type of a solo or anything on there. You can then understand how that solo will then be sculpted within the song.
Next question.
And Douglas still again. A small Swiss label is touting their straight-to-tape records. There's a link there. They're recorded directly from a Midas XL4 console. Wouldn't it be hard to find parts and service for an XL4, especially after Behringer bought the brand?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Parts are parts. I mean, particularly if they're electronic parts, unless they're molded or specific to the console, you can probably get those parts. However, I'll correct myself. I had a benchmark AD converter in my rack that was very expensive, and one of the fans went out on it, and it cooked itself, and I could not get new DACs to run in the. They just were not available, and I even called them and I said, "What can I do with it?" And they said, "Use it for parts." So that's an example of how you can get messed up. You're right.
I'm sorry. I do like, so a retro approach to things at times. It's not something that there's definitely old things that I think are cool, but wow, they've built up a lot around straight to tape. So this is a 4-track recorder, and their big thing is we just record it and then it's done. They can put it on vinyl, and it's an interesting. I feel like we should have them on to talk about it. I find it. I love it when someone goes over the top, on something, and this is definitely over the top. How many people here are thinking about getting vinyl? Like, is anyone thinking about that? I have a request from my daughter to get vinyl. Get a record player, and it's just the problem is it's completely impractical. But all I want to do is get an MK4 1200. that's what I spent so much time using, and so but it's not. There's no good reason to do that. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, just get her clothes in play, and that'll break her of that habit real fast. The idea that you've bought that huge vinyl library and then you had to buy it again to make the transition to compact disc. My hearing's okay, and I've been involved in audio for so long. There are certain things that happen in a vinyl playback that are unique to vinyl, but they're distortions or aberrations specifically related to the vinyl. It's not uncovering nuances that were in the original recording. It's just a simple byproduct of the vinyl process. So what are you exactly listening to? You like vinyl? Do you like tape? Do you like digital?
I think some people like the like there's a there's a grandioseness of that process. I think that people enjoy. We were talking about this in an earlier show, but just the funny thing is someone we got into discussion about if we launched Voyager today, what would we put there? And I think it's the exact same thing that we put there. 40 years later or 50 years later, almost 50 years later, we'd still put a gold record because it's the only way that you'd be able to be guaranteed that someone would be able to play it after 40, 50 years. Like what else would you put up today? That the thing about records is that it's a physical representation of sound. Like a vinyl is actually a physical representation of sound, as opposed to everything else being a magnetic, or memory-based capture of sound. The only thing that we have that does that is vinyl. Go ahead, Chris.
Did they put instructions on Voyager on how to play that record? Is there a pictograph that explains?
I think they assume that whoever would get a hold of it is would be more advanced than we are. No, they'd just be more advanced, and they'd look at it and go, oh, there'd be a bunch of meetings, and they'd have a bunch of scientists with long fingers and big eyes, and they'd all be like, what is this thing, and why is it here? And then they'd go, oh, I think that the ridges are this, and then they digitize it and read it or whatever. I think that the assumption though was that you could figure it out. I think there are some instructions on there if I remember correctly, but I think that the idea was that you would be able to figure out what it was if you were more advanced than we are.
Watch out, Google! Here I come.
It's got a play button. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. All right. This is what happens if you ask a question at the end and we don't have a lot of stuff for the second hour yet. We're not to the second hour yet. We just kind of wrap along on this last.
That is
question.
what we would do. We would just put like a play out B and a big play button.
No,
so you could just play it and say hi.
The chances of a Raspberry Pi surviving in space for 40 years is very low. I'm just saying, like a Raspberry Pi. That's the whole issue is time and durability. It's kind of interesting. I will say that I know that this will upset some people listening, but I will tell you from practical experience that if you get two 7-Eleven cups, 32 ounce. You can make excellent vases with a record, with a vinyl record. You just got to heat it up over the stove, and you set it on top of one, and you push the other one on top, and then you pull it out a little bit. And especially Dramarama, the Dramarama had a great one that we used to make a lot when I was at the record store. Anyway.
Plus, cosmic rays would mess up a Raspberry Pi real fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Found the instructions.
You found are there instructions on it?
Yep.
Let's see. There you go. There's instructions. All right.
The gold record.
Tommy Chance asks, what's on the album? I don't, on this album, I think just different people saying hello or something.
Stairway to Heaven.
Freebird. Finally, you can play Freebird anywhere.
Backwards.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're now transitioning to our second hour, and we're talking about NAMM and Cine Gear. We're going to be talking a lot about that in the next couple of weeks as we go forward, both that and WWDC, is how we're going to cover these. And so we're going to be brainstorming, and so maybe Noah can give us a little bit of an update of where things are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to frame today's discussion like we're going to be talking just from like a public standpoint, but any of the detail work we'll definitely dive into more so in our meetings. So don't feel like you have to like hold your ground on anything, because we'll talk through that and figure that out. I do want to cover like what we've done so far, the organization, and updates until where we are now. So let me go ahead and just show you my screen here. You'll see a lot of details in this first email. And by the way, we'll be switching over to an office hours official email. But if you want to be a part of the team, the first kind of step in would be this email chain, right? And so this first email that went out basically outlines the meetings that we're going to be having over time. And so the next meeting will actually be Friday, which is tomorrow. We also have, if you're joining us late, we have these CineGear catch-up docs and a NAMM catch-up doc as well. So they're basically those emails in a single document so that you can quickly read through and catch up to those. We also have another doc for each event, right? CineGear is the one I'm showing now, but that's just because it's in front of me. But so yeah, we'll have these different links to the different parts of the show, right? So assets, credits, what have you. So this is what we're going to be talking about on Friday and making sure this is fleshed out the way we'd like. The main page I want to show you is the schedule. So basically we've broken down what we need to do into these different dates, right? And this is what we're talking about on the different days. So far we've talked about the big picture, what the show should look like as a whole. And then we've talked about positions this week. Like I said, Friday, we're going to be talking about the Google Docs. And so this helps kind of refine what we're doing and gives us a target of like how much time we're allocating for each section, right? So that we can think about it and not be over or convoluted with a different, splintering of the conversations that need to happen. And so one of the other things that's happening is we have department heads forming. So the ones I want to talk about, Josh is heading up producing and organizing. Laura Thompson's heading up our backend team, right, the 2.0 system, and making sure we're integrated with the OH system. Sky is helping lead the story team, which will include the editors. We have Carl, who's specific to NAMM and leading the on-air team, right? Anybody who's being seen. And then Bill Davis is leading the CineGear team in that same role, anybody who's on air. So that's kind of our quick synopsis. I try to condense it as much as I can. I don't know if we want to throw it to departments or what we want to do next, Alex.
Sorry. I think we have a couple. Go ahead, Sky. Do you want to?
Well, I want to throw out a tease. There's a possibility, really good possibility of a Daria Musk participation with the NAMM. And her history with that experience and bringing that into this opportunity is going to be cool.
Hopefully. Good, Josh.
Yeah, and we were going to just put out there about our recruitment is not complete, but it is closing. And particularly to be able to be acquainted with departments that have to operate around the 2.0 system. If you've not had experience with that, there is still a window open, but that window is closing. So I would encourage you to get involved. This is Laura's department, to get involved in the volunteer group so you can see how those gears work. And then you can participate in many of the different opportunities. As we said, those are closing, and I think Noah mentioned that our recruitment deadline is next week. So you can find the Discord where we have our discussion and voting. We will have our tags for Mukana that will have our own CineGear and our own NAMM Mukana instances. So those voting and those questions are something that we can churn on and add to and maintain the voting during the weeks coming up to it, which is really nice. And in order to tag your question, you'll want to vote for what tags you want us to add into the system. So when you're putting your answers into the system, you'll be able to put them with those tags. So you'll find that a discussion thread and a voting thread. They're separated for a reason so that we don't have the chatter in the voting questions. Just simple thumbs up to give your vote for which tags you would like us to add into that system. And then you can go ahead and ask your question about that person, place, or thing, which will form those tags. You can also find a Google form to where you can either sign up to tell us, what you'd like to help out with, whether you want to volunteer or materially support or offer some type of material assistance in that way.
I have to admit, when I found out that there were lights at NAMM, so hard for me not to go now. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so Josh talked about this. The deadline for volunteering is going to be the 25th. Not that you cannot volunteer for anything else, but for NAMM specifically, we're going to cut it off there. And I think we'll do something similar with CineGear maybe a week later. But yeah, basically it'll be too late for you to volunteer for this show if you're not signed up before then. But again, we'll put other things on the calendar in the future. So for tomorrow, it's 9:30 a.m. for NAMM and 3:30 for CineGear for those meetings in PST. We need the community, even if you don't want to be involved like in a detailed level, but like we need your feedback as far as how we can serve you as the audience, right? So what you're interested in, what you want to see from the conference, from the gear, those kind of things. So feel free to put in Discord those thoughts like we talked about. PDT, thank you, Dennis. Yeah, PDT, not PST because of the time of year.
Just use PT.
PT. Okay.
that's how I solved that. About a decade ago, I just stopped using the D or the S and just PT. And then everyone seems to know what it is, and no one corrects me ever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And then the final thing is today. Like, feel free if you have any curiosity about how we're forming the show or anything like that. That's what today's for. So yeah.
Jeffrey.
So Josh talked a little bit about the material things, but the more we can get on that, the better. There's going to be a lot of Uber rides. I know I ended up getting hotels that are about 5 miles away, so I'm definitely going to be driving in. I got to take a plane into there and everything like that. But if you have a place like an Airbnb or something like that, you're willing to allow the team to sit at, and put gear, because hotels are going to be. But the main hotels are around $400 a night. Those are the ones right next to the convention center, and then it just gets worse from there actually, because that's the other thing is it's right next to Disneyland. So if you have free tickets to Disneyland, we'd take those too.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, to Jeffrey's point, the ground logistics and organizing the boots on the ground team, our field team, is going to be crucial. So currently, I'm penciled in as that department head, but as the showrunner, I don't want to have a specific task. I want to empower people to step into that role. So if you're able and willing to go to either conference, like if you're already going, and you're able and willing to help with leadership and organizing, we still need that role filled. So just another recruitment tool there.
Great. Let's jump into the first question.
All right, first question coming in from Sky Gleason in Seattle. He wants to know, we have opportunities to develop our growing system and want to have fun. Who wants to write and produce or edit video packages for NAMM and Cine Gear?
Go ahead, Sky.
So Chris Fenwick helped us because of the OH Space experience. He consulted on this concept of what is it that we're trying to fulfill. Now, Noah says, yeah, we need 20 individual, 3-minute pieces. And I said, well, how about 3? He says, well, Douglas did 4 on his own last time. So we're doing the math on this. We're trying to work out how to not do things, which we learned again every time we do something. But we do need writers, producers, and editors for these. I don't say we're going to do 20 for each event, but
I have, again, I will, no one has to do what I say we should do. So this is really your show, but I'll give you my input on it, and then everyone can decide what they want to do with that. I highly recommend that you look at the booths that you want to cover. You have people researching it and putting together notes of the things that are highlighted for that thing. Then you do it as a single take. And if that single take doesn't work, you do it again. And then you head and tail it, add a couple things on top and call, or not. The bottom line is you build it as if all you had to do was cut off the head and tail, you could post it and it would be done. And if you have time, so the big thing is that you want to have something where what's killed me is I build things, and I literally have had because I just do this, I cover these for fun. I've been doing it for a long time. There's whole shows like IBC that I have all the footage for that never went out because it just took too long. I took some idea like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to edit it together and I'm going to do all these other things. And then I just never did it. So the things things that ended up out there, and a lot of this stopped, in the 10 years ago because I was suddenly so busy working, I couldn't do them. But the thing that I found that is if I just capture something that can be used as it is, then I can produce a lot, of stuff that comes out the other end. Now, what I would do is I would take notes on what those things are. So if we say, hey, we're going to Chevet's lighting, whatever, then you have a team research what are they releasing, what's new, what are the prices, what makes them different, those kinds of things. And then having a research team either the person does it themselves or a research team on a Google Doc has a little card that these are the 5 things you want to say. And then our host looks at it and goes, I'm here at Chevet. This is how I do it. I just look at it. I literally put it into short-term memory. And then I just sit there and just go, I'm here at Chevet. They've got this new mover. It's $360. And look at this. It's got this LED thing, blah, 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 blah. And then but it's going to come out in June. Boom, done. Move on. And interview the folks if there's the right person to interview. Don't interview someone as a rule. Interview them because you have the right person who's smart, and you have to make a decision on the ground as to whether they're actually camera ready or not. If they're not camera ready, just do it yourself. Just don't, just absorb the information from them and go straight to camera. If they're if they're camera ready, and what I mean by that is they're able to talk, you think they're going to be present to it, and then. If you do an interview and it doesn't turn out well, don't post it. Like what I do is I go, just for safety, I'm going to do another one that's just me doing it. And if I do that, that generally means that the interview didn't turn out very well. I'm not going to use it. So anyway, and a lot of it has to do with them overselling the product. A lot of times I set them up going, I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. You don't need to sell it. The reason I'm here is because I think it's cool. Like you don't have to sell me or anybody watching. Just answer the questions that I have as thoughtfully as you can, and just get, to the point. You don't have to overbuild anything, and you have to use super, like this is the best at blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. So anyway, I kind of set people up for that. But the main thing is the more you shoot for everything in camera in that shot, the more content we'll produce, because it is, especially in these events, because it's all worthless after the show. What I mean is like a week after the show, no one cares. So you want to getting it out timely is more important than getting it out perfectly. And so that's all I would say about that is that what we need from folks is, and again, we can edit some packages. I think it's cool. I think a cool package is like an overview of what NAMM is and an overview of CineGear. And, you get a bunch of B-roll and you get stuff there and you set people up for that. Also one thing that I think we want to think about is handing our panelists the content that we need, just B-roll that we can talk over. Like, hey, let's look at this and let's look at that and let's look at this, so that we're not cutting as we can cut to some packages. But I think a lot of what we want to do is cut to, like show a booth and then we all talk about it. Like, oh, that's a da-da-da-da, and so that we can grab onto those things. The other thing to think about is whether all the content needs to go into the live feed. I'm fine with building shelves for this. So NAMM coverage 2022 on YouTube could just be a shelf that Jeffrey puts up, and then we just throw videos in there as well. So we don't have to push them all. All those little packages can just go into the shelf inside of our thing. They don't all have to be live. So those are some things that I would.
As I said, we're still developing. That's great. No, that's great. Call to action.
And again, I want everyone to innovate past what I did. I'm just trying to save you some of the dead ends that I discovered.
Chris and I did it because we did it the way we did it. Have always done it, and so we're doing new things, and also we're finding a lot of people are doing things on their iPads, and you can do things with LumaTouch and LumaFusion. So we're exploring and expanding all the tools and all the opportunities for people.
And we've done PixelCore did hundreds and hundreds of segments where it was multi-camera and we cut it all together and we made it all work. But it was we had 6 to 8 editors sitting there getting footage and 4 hosts and it was a thing and it was grueling to put it out. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, and so far we have 4 editors who have signed up, and we're always looking for more folks. So recruitment first, right? I do want to speak to a couple things that were just said. Yes to both what Sky and Alex were talking about, but I like to think of them as building blocks, right? So the first building blocks are pre-produced stories. Like, so what is NAMM, history of NAMM, Stevie Wonder package, like some cool things around that. So those things we can build ahead of time, and that's what Sky's addressing first. Secondly is kind of what Alex is talking about, is those quick turnaround pieces. And those, like we said, we can probably do a bunch of those. And then ultimately, this all leads into what the audience would like to see, right? And so I think the core value that we offer the audience is that Mukana voting structure of like the most popular questions, the best questions get asked, and that be facilitated by our team.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and the big thing that separates from NAB, NAB was a 6-hour event that I'm kind of afraid that nobody's going to be watching in the end. So being able to put these into post segments, like you said, actually having a NAMM channel and things like that. And then of course I have to worry about my brand as well as office hours, which it's not as big of a deal because I can always take YouTube from my channel or from office hours channel and still put it on my website. Mm-hmm. But I still want to have that bite-sized content. So if you don't want to search 3 hours just to find us talking to Dante, for example, then you can just go right to the video. And then, of course, it's going to have its own searchability in YouTube, which is key to any of these events.
Yeah. And are we still looking at Saturdays for these? Is that kind of the thing that the coverage, the live coverage, or is it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we basically had a Google form that folks filled out to give us like, what's your availability, right? Is it 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever. And so we got that info right now penciled in for NAMM. It's 2 longer days, right? And CineGear was 3 shorter days. So that's going to continue to shape out. And that's something we need to talk about, Alex, is I don't want to interfere with Saturdays with the education time too. So we got to figure out what that would look like.
Well, I thought about that. I think that we can still, education can do its own thing and then start at 10 o'clock as a, coverage for both of those. So like 10 to 2 on both those Saturdays might work out really well. Okay. To do the live coverage. I think that obviously we want to be shooting segments of those things before that. But I think that might be, because again, I don't recommend going live on the first day of any of these or even the first. We want to lean towards the second half of the show because it gives us time to research and build segments.
Mm-hmm. That's the kind of the back and forth because like you're saying, it is nice to plan and figure that out. the other side of it is the first day is the most attention, right? Most people are attentive that first day of like what's new, what's coming out, what have you. So I don't know.
That's when I recommend posting segments, because it also means that the more we post the segments of what's happening, the more intelligent our producers will be when we get to going to those booths live and answering questions. So
Sure.
Nothing. And I have to admit that I always say I'm done with conferences, but I didn't understand there was going to be lights. That's all. I didn't understand there'd be shiny lights. I'm now trying to organize. I have to go to LA every couple of weeks anyway, and I'm like, I wonder if I could just go to. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say that CineGear is a little different this year in that it's always been on the back lot of one of the studios, and now it's going to be in the convention center. So we're a little bit unsure as to exactly what the form of that is going to be. It's also Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So Thursday is going to be an interesting thing to see whether there's more ability to talk to people and do those pre-interviews or less. And I'm just not, I'm talking to some experts from the industry who are been involved for a long time to try to figure out what they think is going to be this year as opposed to all the ones that we're modeling it on from years prior.
My guess is that Friday will be the slowest day in CineGear because the Saturday will be, it's going to be busy because it's a Saturday. Thursday will be busy because it's the first day. So I'm going to guess that Friday afternoon is probably the slowest time that you'll see in the whole thing. I don't know that for a fact, but that seems to be the trajectory. Or actually Friday morning, probably 10 a.m. Friday is probably 10 to 1 is going to be dead as a doornail. Maybe not dead as a doornail, but very, very dead. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, and Alex, I'll share with you the data that we collected from the Google Forms because I think it's really interesting to see what people are interested in. When we put different subjects, like for CineGear, it was like cameras or audio for video or like all these different things. Same thing with NAMM. We did instruments, and a lot of people were really interested in pro audio and mixers. So it's interesting to see that data and what our group is interested in too.
And not moving lights.
Lights were on it. Yeah, LED walls and lights. So we should have you fill it out so we have your input as well.
I'm in the process of getting more lights. Lights have become like I didn't just Tlaloc has really taken me over to, I would say, the dark side, but the light side, of this, I'm so into like DMX controlled lights now that I'm a little obsessive.
I need to follow up with him and see what his involvement will be with the shows. But yeah.
Absolutely.
There are lights and there are lamps. Just keep that in mind.
There's lights and what?
There are lamps.
There's a lamp versus bulb thing. You don't want to cross that line.
Yeah, I said the wrong thing in a meeting, and he corrected me. I was like, yes. Sorry.
Well, and again, one thing to think about is the possibility of something like, you have, like if we have Tlaloc on the live stream, he can be at home, but when we're going, this is the real advantage that we want to think about how to take advantage of is we have an expert, and we're going to go into the lighting section of NAMM or NAMM. I don't know if it's NAMM or NAMM.
I've heard NAMM, but whatever.
And have him ask, hey, can you go over this way? And then explain to us why that light is really important. Can you go over here and explain why that light is really important? I think that could be a really fascinating thing where we're on a tour virtually with someone who really understands what he's looking at. And the same thing with, many of the other bits and pieces of that. Next question.
It comes from me, and the question is, I was thinking that NAMM and CineGear would be a great opportunity for office hours to brand itself. Shirts, branded lighting blimps, mic clips, office hour brand tally light, anything to make it special. Yeah.
So I tend to be someone who doesn't like to show his work. So we may have some things there. I'm not. What we need to do, in my opinion, is I need to nail it first. Like I don't really want to I don't want to worry about branding everything until we get through. We get through a show that we all went, wow, that was really clean. And then the next show is the one we start putting things all over top of it. But plastering our logo over top of everything before we have honed our skills is something I'm a little concerned about. Go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted to say that with you and I have kind of back end discussed the ability to, if we do shirts or something, to kind of rope in and wrap in our tagline and our mission statement.
Well, we were talking about putting it in Braille, right? Like, so we're having like a raised thing of it in Braille on the shirt. So we're discussing what that might look like. Go ahead.
Possibly also possibly the ability of maybe finger spell as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about how we could do some branding. We talked about mic flags, but the more important thing is that we probably want to get some sort of business card to at least hand to the companies that we talk to. We used to do with CES is we'd actually put together an envelope, which basically had a one-page explaining who we were and what we do and how you could get a hold of us, where you'd find our videos, all that other good stuff. And then, of course, a couple of cards and stickers and things like that. We'd hand them to the vendors. And it was a lot better than actually doing just the business card, because we got, I don't remember the percentage, but we got a little bit better of a return rate from these people, because they actually read through the letter, because it's, they don't normally get that in a regular show.
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, and John Proto could talk to what the budget was and how we found a sponsor for the OH Space merch that we had, essentially. So if he wants to, of course. But I think Alex, I agree with Alex of like maturity, over time we'll develop into these. And right now it's still, even though it's our second major event, it's still an early prototype. We're still iterating and growing. And so once we feel more established, I'm sure we'll start pulling a little harder with that.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, and the brand doesn't necessarily mean our logo on everything. It could also be in how we do what we're going to do, and we're talking about it right now. But if we send a crew out to cover a booth or whatever, the equipment we use and how we go about asking the questions adds a little mystique or a little bit credibility to us, so that in future events, people are going to say, "Oh, there's the OH crew, and they're ones to contend with, or they're good ones to pay attention to."
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we are good ones to pay attention to when we do it. The main thing is that it is there's a thing that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if it actually belongs there or not, but it's he said it's better to keep one's mouth shut and to look foolish than to open it and remove all doubt. And so the main thing is that we want to be careful. We want to be careful of branding too early. Like if we produce great content on our site that covers the footage, that's all we need. Like, I'm just letting you know, as someone who's done this with no cards, no nothing, whatever, if we produce what we should stay focused on. I'm just saying I believe that this is a little bit of it's really easy. And I've been in organizations where we suddenly start having lots of meetings about the merch. And I'm just saying that what we have to produce is great content. And if we produce great content on these, if we produce great videos and a great live stream and it's engaging, nothing else matters. Like nothing else will matter about what we did around it, as long as it's compelling, and it will run the roost. Now, we're running out of time, but we may be able to put some t-shirts together. The one thing that I like to do is put t-shirts together, because it's easier for us to find each other. So we used to have these Pixel Core ones that were big Pixel Core staff, on the back. And they're also a little bit of a collector's item, because we'll do like a t-shirt for NAMM and a t-shirt, and anybody working on the remote crew and so on and so forth can buy them. But the idea, but you can't, if you're not working on it, you can't buy them. Like that's the big thing, is like they are part of that crew. So we'll take a look at that. We probably have to make that decision in the next 3 or 4 days, or we're not going to be able to get them done in time. Go ahead, Josh.
This is a parallel thought, but I thought this is a good place to put it up. In our discussions we've had in our meetings, it was talked about, and Jeffrey mentioned a little bit about the business card actually being an opportunity to bring people into a second hour, or to make connections with people, show them, direct them to office hours as potentially content for the future, as a sort of the reverse promotion is something we might consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we end up talking to a PR person or something like that, having some kind of card, they can at least find us. Mostly what we want is their cards. so what I would, if you're talking to someone that's there, I mean, we can definitely make some of our own cards. We can put them out on Moo or whatever. My only request about cards, if we start designing them, is I know you never think that I'm specific about cards, but I am super specific about cards. White back, black letters. Letters have to be clearly read by OCR. So like, whatever we do, it has to be super clear. I have to be able to take a picture of it with my phone and have it go into the address book and like that. And so black backgrounds, low contrast, all those things are a disaster when it comes to, like, because when people give me cards that are anything other than the exact size that a card is, and that doesn't have the information that, easily readable by OCR, I go, oh, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, we've done a couple of cool things where we actually put a laminate with film crew on it, and it had a QR code on it. So instead of a card to give to them, which they might misplace or lose, we just hand them the laminate with the QR code and let them scan it.
Yeah, that could work as well. But I think the most important thing is if we do have contacts with folks, that are there in PR and so on and so forth, they get their card. Make sure that somebody's collecting all those cards, because that's where we want to go. If we're happy with the video, we think we did a good job, then we send it to them and go, hey, there's a company called Monitors in Motion. I think I was on their front page for like 5 years. I just did one video about their thing with no expectation. I just did it, and they found it and put it up there. I think I got an email that said, hey, can we use your video? And I was like, sure. Next question.
It's from Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, California. He asks, has file sharing been discussed for CineGear? I think this would be a great place to dive into LucidLink and battle test it. It's not going to be a problem.
Go ahead, Chris.
I also meant NAMM as well. CineGear.
Anybody who's interested in using LucidLink for that should ping me. I'm talking to them about it. They're willing to help us, get things sorted out. I met with them yesterday, and we're going to have a meeting with them a little before your meeting, just because it's the schedule that I have, but at 9:00 tomorrow. So if people are interested, just ping me on Discord and we'll talk to them. But I think it'd be perfect for what we're doing. Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, and D, all of the above. Yes, I've already pinged you. LucidLink, Chris and I are using it in the OH Space experience. It does have some limitations, and I'm looking at the broader scale of this, as just like the icon and the logo. I kind of want to put something in place that could expand and stretch and still be flexible. But what is the cost? And Frame.io has also been discussed as a possible solution. So maybe in tandem.
Yeah, I think that we're in pretty good space there. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm just going to say I'm all in for LucidLink. I have to spend more and more time in there. So yes.
And thanks, Bill, for the connection to LucidLink.
No problem.
They'll be joining us in a couple weeks to talk about the product more on a second hour. Next question.
Tommy Shantz from St. Paul, Minnesota. Is there a special onboarding procedure for inclusion to the 2.0? I tried to get in today.
Go ahead, Josh.
It is not special. This is the 2.0 onboarding that everyone has access to. So you can go into the office hours 2 channel, and I see, Tommy, that you have done so. You'll get approved for the sheet. You put your name down for one of the training sections, and then you can get into the sheet. We'll send you your access as far as Unity, and your access if you need access to the controller. So same onboarding process, and we'll be looking to direct people to that to be a part of our special projects, but just a part of the back end.
Go ahead, Laura.
Josh pretty much covered it. Thank you so much. But yes, and I encourage anybody that wants to be a part of the offsite technical to jump in, because the structure is going to be a little more complicated for a show like this than it would be for a general office hour. So we are going to need other people, extra people.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, and a question for him. For NAMM, are we going to have crew carrying press boxes or a field mixer to get clean audio from the product being demonstrated?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yes, in some way, shape, or form. So this has been the biggest topic of discussion, is what the field crew packages will look like. So basically, it's still an ongoing discussion, and our deadline for that will be the 26th or 27th. So about 6 or 7 days away. So we'll really flush that out, and a lot of these conversations are ongoing of what we're going to have. But I think at the minimum, we'll have some sort of input with a direct box, so that we can take instrument levels or audio from another source, XLR in, that kind of thing.
Go ahead, Sky.
And another talent resource is George from Venice Beach is also participating currently, and his long history with NAMM is this is his people, and these are a thing he's used to doing by himself. But good audio is what he wants to bring to this, and he's also going to be a part of the party, at least to this point.
With Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's always exciting. That's why I always brought 2 microphones, was to be able to put one in front of a speaker, or be able to unplug it from the microphone handle and then plug it directly in, so we could get some sort of sound if we had to show off things like keyboards. So it's definitely going to be covered, and we definitely talked about that in our last meeting.
Good guy.
Yeah, I was trying to mock something up for NAB, and I have it here. This is an iPad Pro, the larger 12.9-inch model with a MixPre mounted underneath. This is a MixPre 10, and then it's in an Axoon cage with batteries, and then the audio. I wouldn't use this one, but that's just a Rode on a hot shoe mount that's 1/4 and then there's NP batteries on the MixPre 10, and then I stuck a handle on the side just to see what that felt like. Because
are you able to use the USB-C for the MixPre 10 into the?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, wow. So the MixPre 10 audio goes directly into Zoom, and it does work. And now there's XLR input, and you can choose line mic.
And you could do the MixPre 3 as well, right?
Yeah.
Look at his temples throbbing.
Watching an idea be born.
Yeah, I mean, because we have a bunch of MixPre 3s here that might be a little more portable than that, but it's a pretty good setup there. Yeah, it definitely get attention. What is the holder for that again?
This is an Axoon cage, and the only bummer is that it's tough to get your iPad back out. Once you put it in there, it's going to take a few minutes to get it back out. Right. So I've been kind of missing having my iPad while I'm mocking this thing up. But it does have 1/4 on the top, on the sides, and then on the back, I stuck that Rode shoe. That's just a 1/4 to hot shoe, so I could take out that and throw Electro or something else in there. But the handle's also in a 1/4 on that side. So yeah, the operation would be like, handhold it like that if I need to go handheld, or both sides. And then battery swaps would be, pretty fast with 2 MP style batteries.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. Right. That's really cool.
Watch Alex's face. Somebody pull this whole segment, and I wish we were ISOing Alex, because that was priceless.
I wish we had a heart monitor and a respiration.
Really, really like that. All right, go ahead, Noah.
Well, I think Sky and I are cut from the same cloth. I have in front of me a MixPre 3 with a Shogun on top of it, and it looks very similar to his rig, but instead of a 13-inch monitor or whatever that was, it's a 7. So that's really cool.
I do think that I mean, we'll see. What I'm curious about is how good the cell coverage is. Because we're still on the hunt for a live view. We thought we had one sorted out, but we don't. So we're kind of working through that. And if we don't get one, it may be coverage with all cellular. And so we'll take a look at that. It's cellular either way, but it might be more of the iPhones and iPads. Go ahead, Mitchell.
That's part of the branding I was thinking of when I mentioned it earlier, is that having cool gear and nice setups like what Guy had there, that's going to get a buzz. And if we're part of that buzz, that, hey, look at these guys are innovative. They're putting all these things together and making it practical.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying I never want it to be a buzz. I'm not saying that I'm just not sure I want to have the buzz until we, if we take these 2 events and we execute them, really well, and we have a lot of great footage and it's a great live show and everything else, then let's have a conversation about how much. Like, I don't mind putting our logo on everything, as long as we kind of have a system in which when someone sees it and they go to the site, they go, wow, that was the content has to lead, so the output of what we're actually producing, we just never want to be, all hat and no cattle.
It doesn't just have to be the logo. It's just the fact that you did it and you were cool how you did it. That's what I'm thinking of.
It's what we call all hat, no cattle.
Yeah, but I just saw your reaction to Guy's device, and that's the kind of reaction that everybody at NAMM that sees us should have. Like, wow, that is really cool.
It is we just always want to stay focused on the content. Like, we just got to be very careful of overselling the hand. Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. If the technical director will be located on site, have we tested Universe to make sure it can handle loss of connectivity gracefully?
Go ahead, Noah.
So our TD will be part of the 2.0 system, which means that they will be off-site. I will note that our ground crew will need Unity, which Mickey, our engineer, and JJ are coordinating and figuring out essentially. So yeah, we will need to figure out what that will look like, obviously, because there is chances of losing connection throughout the whole building. You know, big steel buildings and convention centers aren't known for their best internet connection. So we'll be troubleshooting that and figuring that out as we go.
Next question.
Michael Fosbein from Woodstock, Georgia. Noise has always been a huge problem for covering that show. The standing noise in the hall, especially in the percussion area, is about 85 dB. What is the best way to handle audio in that setting?
Noah.
To get a microphone as close to the source as possible. We're looking at the Sennheiser MD46. That's what Mickey and Carl recommended over SM58s. So I have SM58s as well, but yeah, we'll get that microphone as close to the source as possible. We'll also try to direct in, like we said, for specific instruments. We also want to use in-ear monitors as much as we can with our boots on the ground team so that they can hear what we need them to hear.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the biggest thing with this going to NAMM myself that you'll find is you get into one area and it's going to be nice and serene, and then of course you'll move forward, and then you'll start to hear the drums, and then you'll start to hear the basses, but it will always be in a confined area. So as you continue to go, you'll stop hearing the cymbal crashes, and you'll start hearing the guitars, and then you'll stop hearing the guitars, and you'll start seeing the lights. So, and then of course there's once you get to the other levels, I put the map, by the way, into Mukana so you can take a look at it, because there's only going to be 3 levels. When you get to those upper levels, those are the like Yamaha and stuff, and companies like that will have those booths. They're in a completely carpeted room. They're relatively quiet and sound controlled. So I don't think this will be as much of a problem with that. And of course, with those microphones, long handle microphones, I'm a big fan of. So, and that's what I lobbied for when we're putting the gear together.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of loud shows, and I haven't used anything other than SM58 for, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years. So I don't know anything else. I know that it works like in very loud environments. The biggest problem we have is actually you don't feel like you're anywhere, with it, because it knocks out so much around it. So if the Sennheiser works great, then that's great. And I'm glad we have some SM58s, and it'd be great to compare and contrast. Maybe even do some tests where we unplug, literally go from one mic to the other and see what it looks like. So in our geeky nature of covering it, we'll figure that out as well. Next question. Or go ahead, Noah.
No, I was about to say that same thing. Is like we could literally do a side-by-side between the two. I know Guy Cochran has an older video on YouTube comparing a lineup of handheld microphones, and the advantage there would be that the mic stem is much longer with the 46, so you can I essentially have it a little bit extended.
Again, because I don't interview people very often, I don't like on the ground. I think I'm probably less sensitive to that, but I would still recommend doing that only when it makes sense. Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California. Can we talk about credentials?
Go ahead, Noah.
This might be an offline conversation too. Alex, I know you and I spoke a few times about we basically have different ways of getting those credentials, but I just want it to be very concise and clear of if we have 7 or 8 people who are asking, and we're not having 6 different people try to get to the same source,
We just need a list. Someone send me a list, and then we'll see what we can get. Cool. I find that in general that for almost all the conferences that I've done, it didn't really. I mean, the press pass didn't really matter. Just to be clear, I just go in as an exhibitor. I just go in, I just get an exhibit pass and go. Press is nice because it gives you a room to go to. There's coffee, So the reason I like getting press passes is coffee in a room. There have been a handful that were a little touchy, but it has been. They kind of gave up on that because it's the blur between the bloggers and everything else became so gray that I haven't seen anybody enforce that for a decade. And if they do, they're idiots. That's coverage is coverage for most of these folks. And so, making that work, the biggest reason that I get a press pass is because I get to go to certain things. I get to walk into the seminars, and I get to sit. I get to sit down somewhere nearby and have a coffee. So we'll see what I think. It helps to have the person who's the people on air, the people in front of the camera. It helps to have them get those. But again, we haven't had that problem. I'd say 10 years, and I'm saying conservatively, maybe 15. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey might speak to this, but I think there's a chance of that press pass getting us in the day early for setup, so that might make the difference. But Jeffrey, maybe you can speak to that.
Is that true? Because usually that's exhibitor pass that you want, Jeffrey.
Well, you also have basically NAMM would always have a press day, and that was always the day before, and it would be like for 2 or 3 hours. So it's similar to something like a Showstoppers or
Right.
PepCom, where you get in and you get to each of the booths, and then you could get your initial articles out there. There are other things when you get up to that second level and third level on NAMM. Some of those are going to be closed to the general public, and now that they've had the general public coming in for this NAMM, that might be more or less. I do have a press pass, and I do have the contacts for the press side of NAMM, and we can definitely send an email and talk to them that way.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
Sky Gleason from Seattle. Was that whooshing sound the money flying out of Alex's wallet when he saw what Guy was showing him?
It was close. I mean, one of them's exactly money. Yeah, I think that it's really interesting to think about. I love the idea of being able to cover it in a compact way, and I know that we had Mr. Net, and I think that they might be interested in helping us again, and I'm open to that, of figuring that out. And if we don't sort out, I'm going to make one more request for the live view, and if we don't sort that out, I think we're going to go, heavily towards that that process. I still think we can have a main system with a camera, but I think that we want to think about that there. Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, what I have penciled into my brain is the live view is our main kit, and then the Mr. Net would be our mobile kits, right? And I just bought some iPhone adapters that allow you to do USB Ethernet in, which would be the Mr. Net, and then also a power supply. So if we're able to do USB in, maybe we can do an audio interface, maybe even the mix pre, so that we can take that into an iPhone, and that would solve our audio issue as well.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this next week again, because one of the things that's important is for us we're going to have to make decisions, pretty hard decisions pretty quickly here, to decide what we're going to do. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Not only hard decisions, and we've talked about this in our meetings, is we don't want to be there the day of the event trying to figure out where A goes into B and B goes into C and C goes into D. So having a good idea of all of our gear beforehand and being able to put it together is going to be key, so we can hit the floor running.
Next question.
It's from Douglas Carmichael. If the Office Hours 2.0 hardware will not be manned during the event, would you set up a service management tool like NSSM, and then there's a link there, to automatically restart Isadora Universe et al. If they crash?
Go ahead, Noah.
So it's interesting. My personality before is like I wanted to know every detail and learn the intricacies of how things worked. I still have that sort of, but I've realized like in this group that there are people who are much more skilled than I am at certain things. And I'm super happy to rely on the team for engineering, specifically Mickey and JJ, right? So those are the folks who are ultimately the backstop of our Isadora Universe setup. So I'm completely relying on them to make that happen. And then over time, we all know this, we're moving to a system that could be replicated where, it's not one person or two people that are, the limiting factor there, that we have a process that can be repeated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that, and we're still experimenting, which is why I'm a little hesitant to brand it, because there's going to be a point, I think, within the next year that we're going to be probably one of the best coverages that you can find on a lot of these shows. But I think that I don't want to put too much pressure on it. I can tell you that if we put logos on everything, I will feel a lot of pressure. And then I will be more hands-on and more edgy than I normally am. So I prefer to protect everybody from that. So anyway, because I just worry it's there's another saying that I'm channeling Sky with sayings, but trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. And so, we want to be very careful about pushing too hard until we really feel like I'd rather do something that was excellent in front of a handful of people than something bad in front of a lot of people. And we don't, this is the first time we've gone to these shows. A lot of times, because I had covered NAB so often and CES so often and CGRAV so often, going to it, there was no new things. Like I knew what the coverage was going to be like. I knew where most of the booths were. I knew what the challenges were. We're still learning those things, and so we just want to, be careful of going too far, getting over our skis. Next question. Oh, Laura, sorry, Laura. I skipped a bunch of people here. Go ahead, Laura.
Oh, that's okay.
Mitchell.
Laura, Noah up?
No, yeah, I think that.
I think I went. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Laura.
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, just back to the question. As I'm kind of scheduling and producing overall the back end team, there will be I've got a very detail oriented and redundant kind of look at this. And as I start to lay things out in docs and things like that, yes, we have a plan for, but I prefer it to be a little bit more human driven right now, my preference. And I really do think that we'll probably have somebody on the hardware.
Go ahead,
I can't guarantee, but.
Right. Yeah, Mitchell?
Listening to what you're saying about the branding thing, it could also work well to not brand and to keep a low profile, but be very well kitted out and professionally done. Mm-hmm. And people will wonder then, equally so, like, who are those guys? Because they won't know necessarily, or they'll make it a point to find out, especially if we do a good job. It's sort of self-limiting that way.
Yeah, I prefer to, let our output speak for us. Next question.
Noah Sargent from Fullerton, California, and on the panel here. Are these events unpaid but still provide value?
What do you mean by that, Noah?
Yeah, I guess value to the crew specifically. Like, what are we getting out of it?
What are you getting out of it? I don't know. I will admit that I've never been paid to cover any of these events. So I do it. I've always done it as a way to get better. To me, I have to admit that the thing that drives me the most is that I'm there and there's a bunch of people online that aren't there. And I just look at it as something that was fun to do, like share what I'm seeing out of it. I don't know if I really got a lot out of those things in monetary things, but a lot of doors open when I send emails because if you search for me around the internet, I can be found. And that comes from, doing a lot of these things. The other thing that I've learned a lot in these teams when we built them in the past is that they're just the best way to network with people is to do something, to be in the trenches. And so if you have the time to do it, that's how I find everybody that I work with is that somehow we started doing something together. And a lot of times it's these kinds of things that we all kind of work together. And then next thing you know, I'm hiring them when they fit into what I'm trying to get done. And so I find that people say what they, this gets back into marketing, but people say who they are and what they do and how they do it. And what you really learn is when they actually are doing it with you is the part that's valuable. As a group, the opportunity for us is that we're, again, while we may not be branding it heavily, we are positioning ourselves as a key resource for the industry. And that has long-term benefits for everybody, and it has benefits for the panel to be seen by more people. It has benefits for everyone because it means that when we want to do a second hour with someone, they know who we are. When we want to, get support down the road, this is the grind. I mean, I think there was someone asked, and I think Marquez Brownlee put out something where someone was talking about how YouTubers get popular. It's 100 shows, like 100 shows of nobody watching, Marquez Brownlee like forwarded it and said like this, like this is what it takes. And so this is the beginning of these, and this is the beginning of us figuring this out as a group, not, and so we need to be ready to take that in stride, and learn from it. And I have a lot of, I was just in a meeting yesterday that someone was an early Pixel Core member And they were like, "Hey, I was in the Pick Score," and I did these things, and now they're doing other things. But they, there's a lot that they got out of those early days. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
For me, it's more than 100. I think I'm at 1,000. Yeah. But anyway, and I have my own brand to contend with. So that's one of the questions that I always ask myself is where I would be better fitted into. If I was to go by myself with my Geeky Zine brand, then it would I would be hunting and trying to find sponsors and ultimately saying, okay, I gotta get the plane ticket, I gotta get the hotel room. So I'm already committed to go there, and then find after the fact. Yeah, I do get a lot of companies that after the fact they send me products, and that keeps me going. My channels have the monetization on it, so they can make money. So ultimately, in the long run, it does benefit for that. But with the group, the best part about that is just the fact that I don't have to worry about that camera gear and all that stuff that guy is showing that Alex is salivating over. I don't have to touch it. All I have to do is, if my job is to be in front of the camera, and do the interview and focus on that. And I think that helps me hone this part in a little bit better, rather than worrying about if the cameras are on, if it's recording, or if it's streaming, or how the mics are.
And I do think that long term, and I tend to think about things in very long curves. If we do this every, let's say 2 or 3 months at a different, on average, across these, we've got this little cluster of ones that we're doing between NAMM and WWC and CineGear. But if we start doing these every 2 or 3 months, and we get really good at them, and eventually we have 30, 40, 50 people working on them, there's nobody else in the industry that's doing that. Nobody, and then that becomes, we could theoretically become a huge part of the source. And that network effect for folks like Jeffrey means that, there's a lot of viewers watching what we're doing, but they're going to meet him, and then they're going to follow him going down those paths as well. And social folks do that, use that network effect all the time. They do things together to get a lot of coverage, and then that helps energize their own channels. Go ahead, Bill.
Change happens, and when change happens, there is always opportunity that follows along right behind it. You ask, really, do they still provide value? I think what we are doing right now is the most value you can get, because the industry, the world, is changing. We've all seen it. 2 years ago when I dropped by here, I had never heard of NDI and 30 other acronyms that are absolutely critical to where communications are going in the next era. Now I am conversant and familiar with almost all of them, thanks to all the people here that I've met. Here's your chance to make human-to-human connections with people on these crews, either in virtual space to do the back-end stuff, or as we are starting to do now by going to events. I think this is going to do nothing but continue to expand. And if you get in early, everybody, that's how all the rich people said, I got in early on whatever it was. And then I was smart enough to do the work and leverage my skills. And I was in front when there weren't 10,000 people trying to do it, right, but 100 or 20. And that's where we are now.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, again, we work with barter tokens, sometimes we call cash or some transactional thing. But yes, the relational experience we've already talked about. We're building community, and for me, I'm being paid in experience and relational experiences, relational connections. And this is a great experience. I love your ground floor opportunity idea, Bill. That I hadn't thought about that yet, but yeah, we're creating systems for the future. And that's why my earlier question about 12 years from now, I still want to have a value. And so it's like always learning. This is that opportunity.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and we still haven't touched on the social aspect of things, how we're going to be getting pictures that'll be going up on Facebook, going up on Twitter. If somebody's going to actually be doing TikToks, if you get a picture in front of one of your favorite musicians or anything like that, because anything could happen. You could be in the middle of an interview and all of a sudden, I don't know, Metallica could be passing right behind you, and that would create a big stir. So there's a lot of the social we haven't even delved into yet.
And I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, the only reason I say that is that I am concerned about it eventually. The mistake that I think that I've made in the past with a lot of these things is trying to do everything. Like right now, all I'm worried about is some great segments and a great live experience for 2 or 3 hours. that we just want to stay focused on it. We will add those things piece by piece by piece, but I've killed myself in doing trying to do I'm going to try to fit everything into this little package. I'm in because we haven't really established those things yet. We are going to over the summer, but I'm not too worried about that, and I want to be careful of not trying to add the kitchen sink into the project just yet. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I think the core of this question is I feel like a lot of the times we can easily get stuck on the monetary value of a exchange, right? So we are used to getting paid for money for our time or what we do, right? And that's valuable. Obviously, we need to make a living and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what we're doing, and hopefully we're all seeing this, is that there's other value besides the monetary value, reputation or relationships, right? There are other things that get formed and built out. And so I can just reflect on my career and the things I've been on, but the biggest shows and the biggest projects, like when I was on Mandalorian or when I worked on a Spielberg movie, it was because of the relationships that I had with people that got me on that. And I think that's the same thing that's happening here, is this community has those relationships and builds that reputation so that we can do that. It provides opportunity to those involved to step into leadership and the things that we're doing, giving people opportunity to do things they haven't gotten that much experience doing yet.
It's in our industry, a lot of times, there's this is the problem, which is that someone's here. Getting to here is not trivial. There's just getting a job to do the thing that you want to do. There's this huge gap of how do you do that? And, taking on projects that allow us to do things that we don't have enough experience to get paid to do yet is building that ramp, to let people actually figure that out. Next question.
And it's from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, PA. What can we expect from the upcoming prep meetings?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're talking about the Google Docs and the support docs that help organize the back-end side and just making sure we have all the things in place. So we'll be spending 30 minutes or so on that, talking through that. And then next week we're talking about the back-end structure, which is engineering, comms, and Mukana. And so, to get involved, again, it's this funnel kind of effect. The first thing you need to do is get on our email list. Second thing is fill out the form, and then we'll get you into your departments from there.
Next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. The whole setup is very dependent on JJ and Mickey. Should we have engineering procedures written so someone else could take over just in case something happens, i.e. one of them gets sick, has a family emergency, etc.?
Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, this is something we're definitely considering, and it's an active process that's being developed. I will say, though, yes, engineering is pinned on JJ and Mickey right now, but so are some of the other departments and the things that we're doing. We need the people that we need to make this show happen. But yes, over time, you're right. We will have systems in place so that it's a repeatable thing. So, we can essentially sub out anybody in any position in our system so that we can do multiple events at the same time. And we might have lost Alex. So
interesting.
Go for Bill.
Okay.
Sure.
So actually I had the next comment, and I was just going to say that, one of the magic pieces of working in this virtual space is that there's always somebody who can grab the controls and touch base with things. You mentioned two of our stellar people, but there's Brian Anderson and a whole bunch of other people who, if the world hit the fan and something didn't go right, there are people with maybe not as much experience, but with tons of experience. And I mean Brian with that, who has as much experience as anybody on the planet. But there's always a backstop, and I think this is going to go along the same way. So that was me. We're moving on to the next question. Mitch?
Michael Vospine from Woodstock, Georgia. He says, I had a similar question about compensation. Your coverage will compete with media companies who have to hire a crew and pay their expenses. Comments, please.
Two different models, but let's go to Jeffrey. Jeffrey and Noah. Jeffrey?
Yeah, just keep in mind a lot of those are going to be 90% of that content you're never going to even see. If a booth is doing recording, they might do a few YouTube videos, but some of it's going to be internal, some of it's going to be external. The other media companies that are going to be there are local TV press and maybe some competition. But I've always come in and I've always done my content, and I've seen the other people do their content. There's enough room for everybody to make it happen.
Noah.
I think the key word here is value, right? So the companies who are hiring people to work for them, or because the video that they're producing or the live stream they're producing provides value to that company, and they'll have specific needs and wants with that live stream. We get to do something a little bit outside of that because we're not limited to that structure, right? Or one company or a sponsor is asking us to do a certain thing. We get to have creative freedom to develop and iterate on the system, and that's the cool thing about the differences there. Some people are going to see it and some people aren't. So, if you have to be paid and you won't work on free projects, that's okay. This isn't for you. But those who are willing to, stick their neck out and try something new, that's the people we're recruiting and asking to join our team.
And actually, Noah's first word, value, here, I think is one of the most critical ones, because everybody who's here today, that's why we're here, because we think it's building value in our lives in terms of expertise, understanding, competence, awareness of how it works on the next level above us, or even 10 levels above us. And if you don't have that awareness, it's really hard to get into those crews. Let's go on to Sky.
I currently rarely interested in the National Forest Service because it's stated that they have 20,000 employees, but they've got 100,000 of volunteers. And so to put specialists in the forest to take care of certain issues, but then also the volunteer concept that comes in to really flesh out the need of a situation. I'm just curious how we will be evolving, because there will be sustainability needs. And I worked for those crews, Michael, as well. And the audience was very small. I think we've got an opportunity of originally getting our systems very tight and communications for, as Noah has said, the information from those events out to the people that want to understand more and learn more every day. So how do we compensate, be compensated, be sustained? Yeah, that's all a part of this laboratory adventure that we're doing. It's kind of fun.
And Josh Kaufman.
And Noah kind of touched on it, but I think the important thing about our broadcast is that we're not competing with a lot of these other structures that have vested interest, whether they have to concern about sponsors, transactional events, their own vested interest. Our main focus can be, because we're not competing, the interest of our viewers. What are they interested in? We're actually having a conversation with people. We're covering what people are voting on, what they're interested in, as opposed to focus groups or what we think people might be interested in.
And absolutely, and Alex has said a number of times, one of the reasons he structured it the way he did, where there is not a compensation system, there is a volunteer and, I guess, earned reputational credibility, is that as soon as the money gets involved, things get very different. And then all of a sudden, if you fail, if you don't go on the air, if something doesn't happen, there's a breached contract, and your reputation is badly damaged as an individual. We are a place where you can come, take that step off, try, see if you can get comfortable with it. If you start getting comfortable after the 10th time you've done it, then you're perfectly capable of going out into the marketplace and selling that service to somebody else, and that's your benefit. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question from Greg Greckmeyer from Topping, Virginia. Can someone repeat the roles available for an offsite person to fill? Example, I'm a novice in broadcast, but I do have project management skills.
Noah.
Greg, we're happy to have you. So experts on the panel, right, talking about the products, whether for NAMM it would be audio, for CineGear it would be cinema-related products. Secondly, would be field crew wranglers, right? So somebody who's coordinating between the production team on the ground and then our remote team helping in the back end. And then also there's the back end technical crew, right? Those who are cutting the show or organizing questions, or really getting panelists through our system, right? But before we get into all of those details, I would like to say, taking a step back, to get into the system and to volunteer, you need to reach out to myself or to Josh via Discord. You'll get on the email chain. Once you're on the email chain, we'll get you filling out the Google form, and then from the Google form, you'll be assigned one of the departments.
All right, I see Alex has popped back in. Alex, are you all set for grabbing the reins? Oops, no, you're still muted.
Should we make him do another mic check?
Comcast is just went out for 5 minutes. They did that yesterday too, so this is the second time in 2 days, and it's great. Anyway, it's good. We've built a very robust system, and I really wanted to talk to the question about the fact that we're competing with other folks. I just don't think there's a lot of competition. I think there's so much to cover. I don't know what you guys said, but I just think there's so much to cover. It doesn't really matter. It's not like someone's going to get less of whatever they're getting to you're going to get the sponsors you're going to get. I mean, we're just doing. Maybe that's what you guys all said. So maybe I'm just repeating it, but I just don't. It's such a deep thing.
What's interesting too is like you can have that mindset of, oh, I'm competing with everybody here, or you can have the mindset that we're all on the same team working for different goals. So I'd like to have the collaborative mindset.
and I will admit that a little bit of me is, this is our team. I'm concerned about our team doing well. So if people want to do what they're not in this team, then they're not on that team. All right. Like they can contribute to what we're up to or not. Next question.
Dennis Champion Walker from Mansfield, UK. In what ways can graphics be used to enhance these live shows?
Go ahead, Noah.
Dennis, you're one of the folks that we're going to ask to help facilitate that. I think we can definitely show the names of our folks, right? We talked about taking photos of badges to make sure we can get the correct spelling and all that into a system. Mitchell has kindly volunteered himself to create some bumper graphics ahead of time. And I know the next question is talking about recruiting some more folks, but there's definitely a need for graphics for sure.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, you just answered that, Noah. Thank you for the plug there. I just thought that bumper graphics or just some way to provide some continuity into and out of live segments would be helpful.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and graphics have really changed. I could actually be able to do graphics from the show floor, even from like 2 years ago with things like SPX GC, because it doesn't take that much to do. So it'll be nice to have them on the back end and bring them up. And once again, another thing I just don't have to worry about when I'm interviewing somebody.
Yep. Go ahead, Josh.
And it's been put forth at previous meetings that we could have just an outline graphic that the panel can discuss, as opposed to digging into a video or turning it over to that discussion.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that thinking about outlines that the panel can discuss over top of doing pre-built videos, I think most of the videos, an overview makes sense, but I think product discussions, I would highly recommend being something the panel discusses with notes, and maybe those notes line up with something on a graphic. But I wouldn't expend our energy on too many segments that aren't really from the ground. Just because there's plenty of places to spend energy. I think I wouldn't build too many pre-ones. I think the last one was great. They looked great. They sounded great. The ones that Noah did, and other people did. I don't know who did what, but I think that they were. I think that that's just a lot of energy. It took an enormous amount of work to put them together, and I think that we can organically do that inside of it. It'll be just a lot more efficient. So we can spend, again, limited resources. We want to spend them as properly as possible. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, he has a question. Should we recruit Tuomo to create custom graphics as he did for office hours space?
Go ahead, Noah.
I think what allowed Tuomo to do so well is that Chris turned to him and said, give me what you got. Like, this is your playground to figure this out and design it. And I think I want to empower our team here, whether it's Mitchell or Dennis, or even if Tuomo wants to jump in, to be empowered to shine and to create something interesting. And obviously we'll refine that and dial that in, into the bigger system. But yeah, give people the space to create.
And space to create, I just want to make sure that everyone's managed everybody's expectation that less is more. so you'll find that the filter for me is keeping it super, super subtle as opposed to trying to go crazy. So that's all I'll say in that area. Like, I think the OH spaces there, we want to definitely create in that space, but I'm going to be more, as we get closer to the gate, I'm going to be more sensitive to us doing anything that steps too far into a point where I don't feel like it's looks refined. Next question.
And from Douglas Carmichael, our final question. Jeffrey, you mentioned TikTok as a social platform to target. Wouldn't TikTok have the stigma of being a teenager's platform versus the others?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Have you been on TikTok?
I know.
It's
not my experience with TikTok anymore. It's like TikTok is. I'm waiting for the kids to stop using it because all the adults have taken over.
Yeah, get off my TikTok lawn. So no, and I was talking more about socials. I'm talking about, Stevie Wonder passes by, you get a picture with them. I'm talking the group goes by. That's the one thing I missed about not being at OH Space was I wasn't in those pictures. So Just being able to do Facebook.
You
like I
were
said,
in our
a
heart.
couple
You were
days
in our
ago.
heart, Jeffrey.
Oh, thank you, thank you. A couple days ago, I talked about how I sat there and did some video with Mark Wood, a famous violin player, they were just doing a jam session, and that went up on my socials, and it got a lot of views from there. So there's more than just what we're doing on there, because there's going to be a lot of after activities. There's going to be a lot of bands and musicians playing in the event, outside the event, at the hotels. There's just going to be a lot of opportunity to do even more than just what we're thinking of doing.
Yeah, and again, I think that we will continue to grow into using all those platforms. I just think we can do a little bit of that, but we want to be very careful of not taking on more than we can do well. The most important thing is just to keep our elbows in and take on the things that we can do really well and make that great, and then we can keep on adding to it. Because when we talk about like getting other people involved or getting more support in the future, the real power is when we have great content, we have great coverage of those events. That's our calling card to the next event, and to show, hey, this is what we did for NAMM, this is what we did for CineGear. It makes all the things easier, but what makes it easier is the content. None of the flags, none of the marketing, none of the other things. It's just those videos that we can use to frame up what we do. And so we just want to stay super focused on, and it doesn't have to be pizzazzy. It just has to be solid. Like literally, most people can't do solid on a floor. Like just to let you know, like I've worked these things for 20 years, and most people's biggest problem is just not good ball handling. Like it's just the, bad audio, things falling apart, things being rocky, bad framing. Like literally, when you just fix that, you get a lot of attention really, really fast. So because you stand out, you're in the top, 5% really fast, with just some really basic ball handling skills. All right. Excited. I think it's going to be fun. So we'll talk about it more next week again, as well as WWDC. We're kind of finishing some stuff up internally on that, and then we'll talk about that as well. But it's going to be a busy week between those three, and we'll go from there. All right. Talk to you soon. And now we're going to thank you to our producers. Great questions, great conversation. I thought we might end a little early, and then everyone just stepped up and started throwing more questions in. So very good. And thank you. Great panel today. Big panel. Can't do this without you. So thanks for showing up here and having the discussion. And and now we're going to, and thanks to the crew wow, big crew in the back figuring this all out. So really well done. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into After Hours.
So much whispering. Comcast, apparently. Comcast whisperer. Such a happy logo.
Gotta have easy